All right, guys, it's time to get started with the Week 6 Power Rankings. Very excited to be back again and apparently now reaching a larger audience than ever. Really excited to break down these rankings. Suddenly we have 7 teams tied for last at 2-4 in our league. That is an incredible stat. And meanwhile, we've got 3 5-1 teams, and only 4 out of 14 teams currently have a winning record. It's really packed at the bottom and the middle of this league. JoJo and Pablo all of a sudden deciding they want to get in on the action. There's so much to cover. We're going to get right into it, but there's a little bit of heartbreak for me this week. You know, right there. That's just my heart breaking because at number 14, a guy who once upon a time was victory lapping after his week 1 explosion, and since then it has just all collapsed to ruin, and that is the Hindu Himothy, AJ, coming in at number 14. Look, I can't excuse it. I cannot excuse it. You have only broken 90 once since that offensive explosion you had week 1. Now, every time I say this, there's potential for this roster to get better this week. And every time that happens, it seems like you're going even farther down into the tank. If Barkley doesn't go off, you almost have no other backup. Maybe Bigsby will do well. Who knows? But it just seems like if it's not one thing, it's another for this team. AJ right now, you have to get something going, AJ, or you're going to end up being the Joe Douglas of this league and just struggling for relevance every single year and having to make big noise to get relevant. I need to see it from your team before I can rank you any higher. And frankly, right now, I would rather play you than anybody else besides maybe a couple of these other teams. But you definitely, the last couple of weeks, have been the worst team in the league. No question about it. So unfortunately, the Hindu Himothy coming in at number 14. But hey, at least you got your game up, brother. Let's go. All right, guys, coming in at number 13, we have Kirk Lazarus. What a shocker. A 3-3 team at the bottom at 13 in the power rankings, below JoJo, below Pablo. What is going on here? Well, this is not the standings, this is the rankings. And I'm looking at rosters here, and in a battle of 2 of the worst receiving cores you'll ever see in fantasy, it was a decided shellacking on the part of this Pablo-led squad who, in spite of all of his issues, and there are many, which we'll get to, Breece Hall and Joe Mixon, that's a lot more juice than anybody that's currently on this Brennan-led squad. I mean, the last 2 weeks for Brennan have been awful. He had that what looks now like a pretty fluky performance week 4, and then week 5 and week 6, blown out by Nibs, blown out by Pablo, teams that are low in the standings, that are languishing, a couple of 2-win teams, and you're giving them life in their season with how bad your team is. Christian Kirk and Jerry Jeudy at the wide receiver spots, I mean, that's like, I have to cover my eyes when I see that. I feel like Phoebe when she's looking out across the street and she sees Chandler and Monica making out. I mean, that's basically where I'm just covering my eyes because I don't want to go blind looking at these receivers. Awful receiving core. And if Goddard's out for a long time, that was basically your best player. So just a ton of problems with this roster, with this Brennan team right now. I have to punish you in these rankings. I don't know if you're going to win too many more games. I'm not putting a lot of stock into this Devontae trade personally. Who do you have? You've got Haz this week, so that's almost a guaranteed loss to me. I think you're very close to having this sort of slip away. You need to get things going. I know you've got me coming up in a couple of weeks as well. I am really planning on ripping you a new asshole after how pissed I am at losing this week. So, sorry, Brendan, I got to do it. I got to rank you 13th. This is shocking. We're going to have JoJo and Pablo not occupying the bottom 2 for the first time in what feels like forever. Not trying to make a Frozen reference there, but I did it by accident. Moving on to number 12, it's going to be coming up right now. League members, coming in at number 12, we have a team name that finally makes sense. Back-to-back, JoJo has won 2 straight games. Am I reading this right? This is one of those things where you look at it and you think it's one of those fake statistics you have to verify through several different sources. JoJo Cunningham, the JoJo at Richard, has won 2 games in a row. You kidding me? That is incredible. It truly shows how strange these times are, but it has happened. A major upset that just really damaging Nate Solly's entire season. When you look at this JoJo team, you chalk that one up. You have to think that you're going to win that game when you're playing JoJo, and yet this happens. He comes up, he gets just enough. Yeah, Najee Harris looking like Franco Harris against this Raiders defense in kind of a throwback, a game that in the 70s, with John Madden and Chuck Noll would have been excited. Now we've got Antonio Pierce and Aiden O'Connell. That doesn't quite have the cachet of Stabler and Madden, unfortunately, and the Steelers rolled. You're not going to get that every week. And, Noah Fant and JSN eating in garbage time, that's not going to happen every week. Fant was kind of just somehow getting open at random times throughout the game. Diggs has some upside, but, get it while you can because Collins is going to come back eventually. Overall, there's still not nearly enough juice on this roster to put you anywhere higher than 12. I just do not respect the way this team is managed, the way this team is coached. It's not a good team. You don't have any, true help. I mean, Kelsey and Kareem Hunt, yeah, they're technically coming back. I mean, how much of a difference is that going to make? Let's be honest. JoJo, you feasted on a couple of chokes the last couple of weeks. I do not envision this team having any sort of long-term sustained success, and I'm expecting you to go back to your losing ways very soon. With that being said, we're moving on to number 11, and it's exactly probably who you think it's going to be coming up right after this. League members, coming in at number 11, it's your favorite alter team name, but I can't do it this week. Back to standing on business for Pablo, who gets the victory. One of the most impressive accomplishments I've seen in fantasy is to win this week with Dak Prescott. I mean, are you kidding me? Dak choked. I didn't think he would do this bad. The Lions defense has been getting shredded by multiple teams. And with, Brennan's team, I thought, yeah, he might be able to get back on track. But this game wasn't even close. Pablo standing on business. Demolition of this Brennan team, which is terrible. And the bad receiving core that we have for this team is starting to have a little bit more life. Now, Michael Pittman Jr. had to make one of the most incredible leaping contested catches. Really reminded me of Andre Johnson. I don't know who else saw that, but Pittman Jr.'s touchdown was impressive. And then Cortland Sutton ended up getting a couple of big plays, nothing massive. I don't think this team has enough to sustain success, but you do have a better roster than JoJo. And with Joe Mixon and Breece Hall, the players, especially Breece, can be a little inconsistent. Joe Mixon, I think, you have a lot of other problems on your roster, a lot of other bad players, but Joe Mixon kind of gives you a chance to catch somebody sleeping, and you caught Brendan sleeping and just KO'd him. That being said, your roster moves are still an embarrassment. You'll be back to standing on bullshit the absolute second you lose. Who are you playing next week? Let's take a look, or I should say it's pretty much this week now. You're playing Jake. Yeah, I think Jake is going to kick your ass this week, if I'm being honest. Jake, absolutely on the uptrend, obviously going on right now. But when it comes to 2 and 4 teams, you're still among the worst, in my opinion, and that's just the way it's got to be, Pablo. Maybe if you would have picked up a couple of receivers early in the season, a couple guys, intriguing players were on the waiver wire that were available. You've had number 1 waiver priority. I don't know what you're waiting for, but you need to get on top of it, frankly, and I just don't really know why you're not doing that. So with that being said, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to the next team on our list. It's going to be the number 10 team, and it's everybody's favorite Monday night or excuse me, I should say Sunday night fluke coming up next. League members coming in at number 10. Oh boy, the fireworks are going off. Brandon Niblock, the herd mentality. Now, to use one of my favorite phrases, here's a guy who's sitting on his couch Sunday night with his lovely wife, I'm sure, new wife. He's probably thinking, I got the win this week. I'm back to 500. I'm on a 3-game heater. I just upset one of the best teams in the league in this Chris Has squad. Has made all these trades. He trades for Chase Brown. Brown's choking. Then Brown breaks off a big carry to get Has somewhat within striking distance. And then what happens? He fumbles the ball as they're trying to salt away the game. Multiple chances for Giants players to recover. I'm soaking this all in. I'm doing the whole recap of just how incredible this scenario is. The ball's bouncing around, pinballing, and the Giants have multiple chances to recover it, and it goes out of bounds. Now, what are the Bengals going to do? They could take Chase Brown out because he almost just blew the game for them and gave Daniel Jones a chance. Frankly, Daniel Jones probably didn't have a chance, but theoretically a chance to come back and win the game. They could take Chase Brown out and just say, you're done, Chase. No, Zach Taylor sticks with Chase Brown after the fumble. Nibs, his cushion's still good. I mean, it's still really, really solid. And then what happens? They get the ball to Brown on the handoff, up the middle, slices through the line, in the clear, and then all he's got to do is just slide. I mean, the yards by themselves are not going to get Chris there. All he's got to do is slide down. And what does he do? He says, fuck it, and goes right into the end zone. Touchdown. Has already Abby's doing emotional overtime in this marriage. I'm sure it could have been an all-time meltdown. It's what it seemed like. And instantly, this guy's dream is crushed. Chris is fucking celebrating. He's victory lapping. And then one of the classless moves I've ever seen by a guy in Chris who I thought was, kind of a stand-up guy. And then he sends the ESPN taunting animation at Nibs. It sends the guy over the edge. I mean, Brandon Niblock, his new alternate herd personality is being put to the ultimate test right now. This is some of the most incredible adversity we've ever seen. An all-time choke in a terrible spot as Chase Brown rips Nibs' heart out. I still believe in this roster, but Nibs, I don't know. This is the type of loss that could have broken a lesser man. We're really going to see what Brandon Niblock is made of after this crushing defeat that he suffered. I still think the roster overall is solid. I'm not going to lie, it's a kind of a patchwork of teams. I do not like your matchup with the 49ers offense against the Chiefs. That's got the makings of a 20-17 game as it stands right now, but we will see what you can do. That's going to wrap it up for Nibs. Hopefully he doesn't relapse or get triggered by reliving all of these moments, but there's a chance that he is going to go off, and then I'm probably going to get anywhere between 5 to 9 text messages about it. But who knows? We'll see what happens. Moving on, guys, to the number 9 team. It's going to be coming up right after this. League members, we are now down into the top 10 and coming in at number 9. This was a total gag by a guy that has a championship pedigree in our league, a new father recently, again, same old story. We've got, catch me on COD, Nate Solly. Now, when you look at Nate Solly's roster, objectively, his roster is better than the 9th best roster in our league. You got to admit it, and I'll admit it right now. But I cannot let an all-time choke job. I'm concerned for Nate's newborn safety. There's choke hazards everywhere in the Solly household right now. This losing to JoJo with basically no bye week. Who was on bye for your team? It wasn't that many people. I mean, you did have Jonathan Taylor out, but that's the best week to have Jonathan Taylor out is when you're playing JoJo. And you just totally collapse, and your season is hanging by a thread. You're playing me this week. I mean, I did lose, but it was, due to perfidy more than anything. It was just kind of a fluky loss. Kyler Murray and James Conner. This is kind of the narrative with this team. These two guys can have some of the worst games you'll ever see pro players have. I mean, that game against the Packers was an embarrassment. They turned the football over. James Conner fumbling, losing a large number of his snaps to Trey Benson at one point just because he couldn't stop fumbling, was getting banged up. Nothing was going right. Now, a lot of good things. Drake London is really living up to the hype. He disappointed week 1. People were sounding the panic button. He's fine. Devontae Smith's still fine. He had a long touchdown. I kind of thought that was going to get you over the edge. I still like T. Higgins at your flex. I think that's a high-end flex. If you just beat JoJo, there's a very good chance this is a top 5, top 6 team. I cannot let this choke job go unpunished. I'm doing it for your kid. You need to keep him away from those choke hazards. If your kid looks at this, his airway could close up. I mean, we can't have that happening, Nate. Get it together. No more choke hazards. Start winning, and start winning the week after you play me. Don't start winning this week, okay? I need Nick Bosa to just pile drive, or Khalil Mack to just pile drive Kyler Murray into the ground and then stuff Connor repeatedly. That's what I need, okay? And you're not going to have Rico Dowdle, your top-tier RB2 either, so we'll see what happens with that. But moving on, guys, number 8 in the rankings is going to be coming up right after this. Just about at the halfway point, league members, and coming in at number 8, we have Mr. Pumpkin Patch. I still have the Pumpkin Patch air freshener from the bonus video. This stuff smells great, by the way. Really a fan of it. And Boston, if you want to pick some of this stuff up, you can get it at most places, especially this time of year. I usually buy a couple cans around this time and just use it throughout the year. The Febreze Pumpkin Patch is a real winner, folks. And speaking of winners, Boston Monroe, when you add up his running back points, you get 1.8 points from Miles Sanders and 0.8 points from Braylon Allen. I am calling this a fugazi of epic proportions this week. AJ well deserved to be last when your opponent's running backs combined for 2.6 points. I mean, and the fact that AJ couldn't beat you with that ridiculous level of production was sad for AJ, but you had about 60% of your points come from Josh Allen and Chris Godwin. Godwin is not going to go for 31 points. I give you the edge. There's no way in hell I think that your roster is better than Nate Solly. I'm punishing Nate this week. This is more of a him thing. It's not a you thing. I think 9 or maybe even 10, even Nibs, just because, Nibs is, he's a Gruden grinder. He's coaching his ass off every week. I don't know if you're coaching your ass off every week. I don't know if you're doing that with this pumpkin patch narrative. I mean, that's just going to be an all-time narrative for your team, the pumpkin patch. I hate to bring it up, but you did not pick up Devin Singletary's backup when he had a chance with Tyrone Tracy. All of a sudden, Singletary just continues to be on the shelf, and even when he comes back, I mean, does anybody really think that Singletary is just going to come back and get plugged straight in? Tyrone Tracy is a physical, mean, tough running back on this team, on this Giants team. With Boston, there are some positives. Brock Bowers is an elite fantasy tight end right now. There's no question in a year of bad tight end play, especially going forward with bad quarterbacks. You love to see a tight end that can just get a lot of volume. That's Brock. Obviously, Godwin's wide receiver 1 in the year, just like everybody predicted. But you cannot get by with this terrible running back position. I just think when you start playing better teams, you're going to suffer a terrible fate. You're going to start losing a lot of games. Although you do have JoJo next week, there's a very good chance you are going to be in playoff position after next week if you can get a victory against JoJo. If you don't get a victory against JoJo, then JoJo is going to be close to playoff position. Honestly, I don't know which is more unlikely. Those are both incredible narratives that we have at this point of the season. With that being said, we're going to move on. Number 7, over the hump to the halfway point and starting to get on the downtrend with a couple of these teams. We are going to get into it right after this. Gentlemen of the league, coming in at number 7, we have the extremely poorly named Vanilla Vic, Leicester. Leicester had a seesaw matchup this week after ETN totally gagging in the London game with one of the all-time negative 0.1 performance, just an abysmal game by the young man. It seemed like you were screwed. And then by the time David Montgomery got force-fed every single carry at the goal line, much to all Gibbs owners' frustration, and A.J. Brown came back, and you continue to get insane points from your kicker and defense. You and Brennan, I'm finding more and more parallels between you and Brennan every time I look, because you guys both seemingly do not have great rosters, and yet you always are languishing. You're like 8th in the league or 10th in the league in points scored, but you're 5-2 somehow. I'm sick of Leicester getting away with murder here, and I'm glad that he lost. His 2 losses have come against Sean and I. Every time Leicester gets in a big game, when the moment gets real, just like in the playoffs, he chokes. Leicester, choke artist. I'm saying it. Daniel Jones, he channeled his inner Jones. Jones is the ultimate choke artist. Jones in primetime games is everything that we used to accuse Kirk Cousins of being, but worse. Jones cannot get it done in primetime. He's just not good enough. And he choked. If he had been anywhere near Joe Burrow, and he had tons of chances in that game to just get a little bit more production, he couldn't do it. You've got, I guess, a little bit of window of hope because maybe Amari Cooper's stock is going to go back up. But your running backs are suspicious. Montgomery is good, but your RB2 virtually doesn't exist with ETN, who's now hurt. Jalen Warren's not going to fix the problem. Algier is a total high variance player. You don't know how much volume you're going to get. Leicester, Vanilla Vic, I don't see it. I hope you make the playoffs again. You're playing Gabo. Gabo needs a get-right game bad. His team's getting healthy. Gabo, you feel like he has to beat you. Gabo's going to be desperate. Are you ready for this smoke, Leicester? That's the real question. Are you ready for a desperate Gabo team that's young and hungry and ready to get back in the fight? We will see what happens, Leicester. But for now, you are the number 17, just outside of playoff contention. I know you're waiting for me to say it, so I will. You're not a playoff team. Are you going to respond to this accusation? We will see coming up next week. With that being said, folks, time to move on. Top 6. Who are the playoff teams? Who do I believe will set themselves apart when it's all said and done? It's coming up next. Top 6 time, folks. Who do I think is a playoff caliber team? Well, the first team in my opinion, right now, is a team that's been licking its wounds. This guy has been singing the hard luck blues all year. Second most points against for this team. I want you to guess who has the second most points against in our league this year. It's the young thundering herd, Gabo McGregor. Gabo right now is just completely going off in terms of his injuries. He's not going off on the field, but I still think that this team has a lot of great elements to it, and I think he's getting a little bit healthier. I think he's getting Neighbors back next week. Very unfortunate. Not only does he run into a juggernaut with Cam, who completely went ballistic this week thanks to Caleb Williams. He had several issues. He had Achane on bye. He's got Neighbors on IR, and then Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, I know a little something about mid-matchup injuries. That one cost you. You still weren't going to win, but it would have looked a lot more respectable. The fact is you had to start Darius Slayton and Jalen Tolbert this week. That's not good. Kincaid hasn't quite been what you thought. Chuba Hubbard, though, and when you get Achane back and you can mix and match these Raiders guys, Lamar is still an elite player. You love to see him. So I still think this roster has enough firepower to knock out a couple of wins. You just have to get something going, and it's got to start basically immediately. You have to beat Leicester this week to really have a chance. So I like your chances of doing that with Neighbors coming back. And I think Harrison is also, right now, it looks like he's going to play as well. Gabo, your lack of being at the wedding, everyone else in this wedding narrative, it seems like there's on the uptrend. If you had been there, I could have given you a little bit more confidence to get these wins, but you didn't make it, and now look what's happening. You're not doing a great job. You're kind of like the Seahawks right now, not being physical enough with all these injuries. You need to get back on track. You need to beat Leicester. Literally everyone's rooting for you. You've got tons of wind behind your sails to beat Leicester, who will probably be starting either Daniel Jones or Geno Smith. You're going to have a huge advantage at quarterback. Get the victory, Gabo. We're pulling for you. Nobody wants to hear stupid Leicester fucking talking shit in the chat because he thinks he's something special for some reason. Put him in his place and get yourself back where you belong, which is to be one of the better teams in this league, okay? We need the original guys to start stepping up here. I can't just do it on my own, okay? I need some support up here at the top. It's tough up here, all right? Moving on. Number 5, we're going to have a surprise team nobody saw coming, but I truly believe in this roster. I saw it firsthand this week. Number 5 coming up right now. Gentlemen of the league, it's time for our biggest surprise, our biggest leap of the week. I did not think I'd be doing this week. It breaks my heart, but this team was built to beat me. Jake Smith, I love cars, coming in at number 5. Now, when I look at Jake's team, and when I look at kind of the way his season's gone, really reminds me of the Ravens. Got off to a bad start, and then an all-time blunder losing to the Raiders. And with Jake, he had an all-time blunder. He should have won against JoJo. JoJo's team just had every Chiefs player that did well on that Sunday or on that Monday night matchup against the New Orleans Saints. If he had won that game, Jake would be getting a lot of hype right now. He is number 3 in scoring in the league right now. That is a fact that has kind of gone under the radar. Jake was struggling early in the year because he didn't have Jordan Love and Kenneth Walker, and Jamar Chase got out to a bad start. All of those guys are now cooking. Jordan Love, I don't know if you want anybody more in terms of pocket passing quarterbacks than Jordan Love right now, in terms of a guy that just looks like Favre out there just throwing it up. That touchdown to Dobbs really reminded me a lot of Favre. That was just insane. So much depth right now on this team because of the addition of Tyrone Tracy. Caught Boston sleeping at the wheel, picks up Tracy, and all of a sudden he's got a guy that's really going to be a key plug-and-play player. I think he's earned playing time beyond just when Devin Singletary comes back. Some of the other pieces I really like. Terry McLaurin. This guy was just built to beat me this week. McLaurin canceled out one of my key players with Jaden Daniels catching 2 touchdown passes. That was really one of the many differences in our matchup. You have to hand it to Jake. I could almost even rank him higher. I could have put him ahead of some of these other teams. Jake Smith right now is on fire. Tony Pollard, even a guy who I kind of underestimated. The thing with Tony Pollard is there's a lot of bad teams in his division. He hasn't even gotten to play Jacksonville's defense. He is playing Jacksonville on the final week of the regular season and championship week if he gets there. That's a factor, folks. And he's also got the Colts again. The Colts' run defense fucking pisses me off, okay? That touchdown that Pollard had on 3rd and 19, they looked like they had never seen a halfback draw before. Are you kidding me? It was a completely ridiculous effort by a terrible Colts unit coached by Gus Bradley, who is totally over the hill in terms of his defensive scheme, and they don't have good personnel either. But that's got nothing to do with how good Jake's team is. Jake's team is real. Jake's team is here to stay. Who is his matchup this week? Let me take a look. I like his chances against basically anyone. He's playing Pablo. I really like his chances against Pablo. I think he's going to get to 3-4. With the weird record breakdown, if Jake sneaks in at that 6th spot, the guy is going to be tough to handle, and he is built to beat me, like I said, with Terry McLaurin. That's kind of a secret weapon to kind of handicap me in terms of my ability to win football games out here. But congratulations, Jake. I know I've been making excuses. Granted, the excuses are valid. I'm 99.9% sure that I would have won if Mason had just played another quarter even in that game. He was gashing Seattle from the first snap of the game. but I digress. Good win for you this week, and you are going to be probably 3-4 at the end of this week. Congratulations, Jake. You've done it, and you're doing Idaho proud right now. You're coming in there like Genty, getting the job done. All right, we're going into the top 4 now. Teams I think are real championship contenders, and it's going to start with number 4 coming up next. All right, guys, it's that time. We're coming in with some heat because we've got Bijan Mustard. Get it? Although Dijon's not really hot necessarily, it's just slightly spicy, but there was heat coming out of this Cam-led squad. He had to get a win against this McGregor team to avoid falling to 2-4, and then coming into this week where he's got several bye issues and injuries. He needed a victory this week in the worst way, and he gets it. And you know who's leading the line finally? Bijan Robinson. We've been waiting for this eruption. Can Bijan get into the end zone? Well, the best medicine is the Carolina Panthers. I had a feeling this could be coming with the Panthers defense, and it happens. 24 points, and then Caleb Williams. Part of this is due to matchup, okay? You can't get better matchups than the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Carolina Panthers in terms of who you're going up against, and he's got both of them, and he took full advantage. I think Williams ultimately more reliable and probably a better long-term play than Anthony Richardson at this point. And you cannot underestimate how important J.K. Dobbins is to Cam's success. He's been out with bye, and then he had a couple of down weeks because he was facing the Chiefs. Everybody's going to have a down week against the Chiefs. That's just kind of the way it is. But Dobbins reasserted himself as a real asset in fantasy. Dobbins at flex, to me, is maybe the thing that puts your team over the top of a couple of these other teams. You didn't even have James Cook this week, one of your key contributors. You've got some pieces on your bench. Jamison Williams is playable in certain situations with high upside. DK, as long as he's not playing the 49ers and getting blanketed by Renardo Green, should be doing relatively well. And for the next couple of weeks, I like Tank Dell's chances to continue to produce because he was not doing anything when Nico was in there. Now all of a sudden he's starting to become more relevant. So tons of upside with Cam's team. The ultimate Seahawk homer. I do think that continuing to start Seahawks D is stupid, and I think it's bad coaching on your part. They're the 15th ranked D on the season, but of course then you remember that their first 3 games were against Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, and Skylar Thompson. The last 3 weeks, they have 14 points from 3 games, an average of less than 5. It's probably time to move on. Now, the benefit to having Seahawks D is that you got Bijan going up against Seahawks D. All Seahawks fans are probably shivering just at the thought that Bijan and Algier are going to be probably just gashing their defense out the middle over and over and over again. Personally, I hope that they just start making the Seahawks defensive line look like chopped meat out there, just grinding them up, baby. With that being said, Cam, congratulations. We're moving in. 3 teams left to rank. How is it going to shake out? Who's going to be number 1? We finally have some suspense at number 1 for once. We're going to find out just in a second. Number 3 coming up. The number 3 fantasy football team in our league is Mr. Can't Miss Sean Bates and the Consolation Kings. Well, he's not going to be in the consolation bracket this year, barring the biggest collapse in league history. If there's one guy that could do it, it would be Bates, but I don't think it's going to happen. I believe in the team. The team is consistent. Now, he didn't have a great week this week, but the thing with Sean Bates is even his bad weeks are not really that bad to where he just doesn't give himself a chance, takes advantage of a Leicester squad that is just not very good, and gets it done this week. Sean Bates. Now, if Yari is going to watch her bonus content to see what you guys said to get the scouting reports, I'm going to give you the scouting report on Sean Bates. This guy's a real deal. I've been hyping him up in the past, and he hasn't lived up to it, but this year he's living up to the hype. That's the key with Bates. Lives up to the hype. You will not be disappointed. If you guys are watching this, I don't know why you guys outside the league are watching this content, but Sean Bates, real deal. He has my endorsement. I know that doesn't mean anything, but I'm also going to endorse this team because he's got a couple of pieces I really like. Alvin Kamara, so consistent, year to year and game to game. Just the number one word with him is consistency. Bad week for Brian Thomas Jr. He drops a touchdown, but I think overall Brian Thomas Jr. is still awesome. He's still going to be the number one guy there. I'm not buying that Gabe Davis is suddenly taking his place. Bucky Irving, the guy you have to start if you're the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You kind of just have to realize that Bucky is the man that you need to go with consistently. Enough of this Rachaad White business. Just get White out of the lineup pretty much and just let Bucky cook. And then I think some other pieces I like. Kmet at tight end, I think, is a guy you got to kind of start playing. I will give Sean Bates the John Mackey Award of the league because he's rostering 3 tight ends right now. Arguably a questionable strategy, but hey, this Sean Bates character just keeps winning football games right now. He's at 5-1. He's not quite up to the league standard in terms of scoring. He's, I think, 5th or 6th in scoring, but he's right there in that jumble near the top. Sean Bates' team deserving of this place, and he has AJ in an ultimate rivalry matchup this week. I've been hearing rumblings from AJ that he's got a lot of special stuff cooked up for you, Sean. Now, he has been saying that all year, and it's never worked out for him, but this could be the week where it finally works. Could finally pay off for him. We'll see. Sean Bates, Consolation King, Mr. Can't Miss, real deal. It's all happening with Sean Bates. Personal and fantasy life in the wheelhouse, baby. Woo! All right, moving on. Top 2. Who's it going to be, folks? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be Chris at number 1? Am I going to dethrone myself? Find out next. All right, guys, it's that tough moment. I had to decide. I had to make a decision. Am I going to go with my ego? Am I going to say results be damned? I'm the best. I'm number 1. I could easily make a case for myself at number 1. My team fought so hard this week. I coached my ass off this week, okay? And I'm not getting emotional. Even though I saw the win right in Garrett's hands, and he dropped it after I got shellacked, and then they never went back to his way, even though he did draw key pass interference. Heartbreaking stuff. But I'm going to do it. I'm ranking myself number 2. Right on Ronald at number 2. Not great, Bob. Not great. Why did this have to happen? Why did I have to play Jake? Okay? And screw Jake. I could have beat Jake. But Jordan Mason and Dontavian Wicks go down mid-matchup. Mason was cooking. Mason was averaging almost 8 yards per carry in that game. He was just a demolition derby on legs against the Seahawks. That long run he had where he's just pinballing off people, cutting back, stiff arms Witherspoon at the end, which I thought was a really good touch. Derrick Henry is just a monstrous player. All narratives about Derrick Henry are completely out the window. He's a real player. Jaden Daniels, you name it, I had it. Even Laporta did something this week. That's a shock. But the injuries, they sink me. And Saints D, which got off to a great start, that was another factor. Dallas fumbled in the red zone. So many things could have gone differently. I'm really happy with the way my team fought. You know, I talked to Garrett before the Monday night game. I talked to Garrett Wilson. He said, you know, Coach, what do you want me to do? You know, I know you need a lot from me. I just said, Garrett, you just be yourself, okay, Garrett? Just be yourself. Go out there and try and help your team win. Don't focus on trying to do too much. Just give it your all every single play. Take it one play at a time and just execute the game plan. And Garrett looked at me and he said, okay, Coach, that's what I'm going to do. And he went out there, he did his damn best, and he almost had it. He almost had it. And it's a humbling loss. It was tough. I didn't even dare to hope at the beginning of the game. But Garrett, when he starts cooking, there's hardly anybody in the league better than Garrett Wilson. In terms of after the catch especially, that guy is a dynamite player when it comes to his after the catch ability and his sideline catch ability as well. But I still like my team's outlook. We're not giving up. We have a determined outlook against Nate Solly this week. We are missing our special team standout, Aubrey, but we will overcome. And we're going to put a great product out on the field like we've done every single week this week. And we're going to reassert ourselves in this league. I am standing on those words, okay? I'm not standing on anything else, not using that other poison phrase that has been co-opted and totally irrelevant and totally just out of the question. But now you know, we have a new number one team on our rankings. Chris Hasenheier coming in at number one has his Hustlers. 5-1 team, second in the league in scoring, goes through adversity this week. He's got odds stacked against him. He's got Aaron Jones and Kyron Williams on bye. And by the way, Vikings D on bye, that's no small thing either. So what does he do? He picks up Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense on waivers. Tampa. Just like my guy Derek Brooks back in the day, he picks up Tampa and he takes it to the house multiple times. Fumble return, touchdown, big time plays from Tampa. And Chris Boswell, he's a special team star. He's got a right leg like a traction engine, thumping that ball through the uprights, taking advantage of the Steelers' lack of red zone execution to get 17 points out of his kicking game. George Kittle, you want to talk about a guy that blocks out the sun. Call this guy the Eclipse because he can block out anything, okay? George Kittle gets the job done against Julian Love in the Seattle Seahawks. I want you to watch that block he had on Julian Love if you haven't seen it. He takes Julian Love and takes his manhood away from him. He blocks him all the way to the pumpkin patch, which he posted on his social media. That was after George Kittle pushed him out of the frickin' stadium, man. Boom! What a block. And then it looked like it was not going to be enough. Couple guys struggle. Couple guys been relying on struggle. Chase Brown is getting slammed. The Giants front four ready to play some football today, and they are stuffing Chase Brown at the point of attack on a consistent basis. Brandon Niblock, he's thinking he's won the game over here. He's thinking, I'm going to be 3-3, Lottie frickin' da. All of a sudden, Chase Brown comes to life at the end of this game. Now, you think of Derrick Henry as one of the greatest closers. Chase Brown, this guy closed the deal this week against this Niblock squad, getting the game-ending touchdown run that puts Chris Has over the top and gets into the number one spot in the rankings. Chris, he has done it. Absolutely fantastic job by this Chris team. He deserves to be number one. And he's got a chance to remain there for multiple weeks because you know my policy. If a team is number one and they keep winning, they will stay there. Chris, congratulations from me, John Gruden. Here's a guy in Chris Has that knows what he's doing. Very exciting stuff. And that's going to wrap up the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed this edition of the Power Rankings. And if you're outside of the league and you're somehow watching this content now, I guess welcome. I don't know if you guys think any of this stuff's funny or even understand what the hell I'm talking about. If I seem crazy, it's because I am. These guys know. Now you know too. Total nut job. Yeah, basically confirmed. I hope you enjoyed the content though, guys. Definitely, I'm sure I'm going to be getting texts, especially from Nibs. He probably thought he was going to be top 3 this week for some unknown reason, but we'll see. I will see you next week, and don't forget next week, the mid-season recap video where I go over the top 5 draft picks, top 5 worst draft picks, storylines, and other stuff in the video. I'm going to be going over all that stuff next week, so be ready for that coming out. I know that's a popular one, so keep your eyes peeled. I will see you next week, guys. Good luck to everyone except Nate this week.